think like when it comes to the conversation we had last time, every time I'm thinking about the immigration, I'm thinking about the other executive orders, the government freezing of jobs and hiring, all this. I always think about if the money was not broken, then I wouldn't really have to discuss this really nearly as much. It wouldn't be as big. It wouldn't have to be discussed as much because the government is whenever we were on a gold standard, I think is a good example. The government spent 3% of GDP whenever we were on, and that was a semi-gold standard. You still had lots of fiduciary media in the economy. If you have a pure gold standard, the government, in my estimation, would practically not exist. So if you fix the money, I think that what's going to end up happening is that people are just going to buy from the most compelling value creators, and the government is not a value creator; they're a value destroyer. So inevitably, the government is going to become super small and insignificant.
Mm-hmm. And regarding, say, the gold standard, is the reason that the government spent less when we were on the gold standard was because there actually had to be something backing the dollar? You can't just create gold out of thin air like you can fiat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You print money, and the government can steal the productivity from society. So on a gold standard, like, okay, so most government spending now is actually from taxation. So they directly tax you. Like $5 trillion or so a year is directly taxation. So that is and we spend about $7 trillion. I don't know the exact percent of what would be the deficit. Somewhere around like, I don't know, like, I don't know the exact number. Anyway, so you still could tax a lot of economic value out of the society. But the thing is whenever you're on a gold standard, the government has less propaganda. Or whenever you have hard money and the government doesn't have the apparatus necessary, they don't have the intellectuals, they don't have the universities, they don't have the education system, they don't have, like, in today's world, the government controls so much of society, and they constantly propagandize the public of why we need them. We need them for roads, we need them for schools, we need them for healthcare, we need them for so much crap, and people kind of accept that. People just say, oh yeah, we need the government to do this, we need the government to do that, but we actually don't. We actually don't need Social Security, we don't need welfare, we don't need the government to be doing this crap. And if you have a hard money standard, then the government can't tax the productivity of society and tell you that really as easily. So yeah, that's the largest. I think one of the large reasons why the public has largely been corrupted by the fiat money printer.
We have to remember that inflation is theft, and it's really the hidden tax. But look who it is. Hey,
it's
everyone.
The audience. Wow.
Hey everyone, welcome to Youth Bombs. I'm Craig.
I am Coleman.
And I'm Holden.
And we're the voice of young conservatives in Alachua County. Looking at crypto today, we were just discussing some of the principles of money. Holden, how would you say Bitcoin emulates that in respect to being an equivalent of digital gold, for instance?
Well, it's better than gold. Money has to be saleable across space, time, and scale. And it's way more saleable across space than gold is. You can't send gold easily across borders. So it's much more saleable across space. Scale, you could divide Bitcoin infinitely. Bitcoin is infinitely divisible, and the Austrian perspective of money is any supply of money is sufficient as long as it's infinitely divisible. So so that's the Austrian theory, and that's what Bitcoin it was kind of made by. And then saleable across space, time, and scale. So across time, in 100 years, your Bitcoin will be on the blockchain in your keys, no matter what. Nobody could take it from you, really. And so the likelihood that Bitcoin will have value 100 years from now, I think, is pretty good. Now, we don't know for sure, but I think the saleability across time has nothing has performed as good as Bitcoin and over a long period of time. So I think the saleability across time will continue to showcase itself, and as cash balances flow into Bitcoin, then that's what makes it money eventually, is whatever has the most cash balances. And it's already passed the Canadian dollar, I think, recently. I think there's only a handful of currencies that have more cash balances than Bitcoin. So it's going to continue to surpass everything, and eventually it'll be the dominant held cash balance.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's got over a $2 trillion market cap as of now, and it continues to grow, continues to expand. The gold market cap is significantly bigger than that, and many people are predicting, hey, Bitcoin could reach that or even surpass that. Some people think that as far as the price goes, we could hit $1 million per Bitcoin. But Coleman, as an economics student, how do you feel about Bitcoin as an some monetary unit?
I think Holden broke it down quite nicely in the sense that it's saleable across time and space in the sense, yes, it's infinitely divisible. That's good. It's liquid in the sense it's easily transferable across parties. Another good thing about it is like you can see like who bought what. I think for the most part, isn't it open source?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could audit it.
So, and all that's great. One of the downsides still about Bitcoin is just because I think it's not FDIC insured. And what that just basically means is that if you get scammed, it's very hard to recover your Bitcoin money. So that's why we kind of have like, that's a whole thing right now in the crypto space, just people taking advantage of like vulnerable influencers and saying, hey, I have a meme coin, you'll get rich. Okay, great, let's launch it, and then rug pulling. But that's a conversation we can get into a bit later. But I think Bitcoin just needs a little bit more time to mature. I think it could use... it's weird, right? Because it's a weird dance of... It's supposed to be like the anti-government coin in the sense that like it's supposed to be independent. And even like one of the critiques that was being talked about earlier was, oh, well, Trump says, oh, I'm going to make Bitcoin great. But then it's because of my influence. But then like the Bitcoiners, or at least the trad ones, are like, well, wait a minute. The whole point of having this was like to be independent of government influence and government meddling. So, but then, yeah, it's like, do you want your money insured? But like, you want the government. Yeah, so it's a weird balance of like, you want the government to step in to have your money insured, but you also don't want the government to influence the currency as a whole. It's a weird balance that's being played out right now. And we kind of see this conversation going forward as like, we had this like whole Bitcoin ball a couple of days ago where like all these big people and big names in crypto are like talking to the Trump admin and figuring out what to do with like the technology. Yeah, it's an interesting time, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, though regarding, say, insuring money, right?
Yeah.
I think Holden would also agree that given its nature as a potentially risky asset, right? It can
Yeah.
go up, it can go down. You have swings there. I don't think the government should be insuring it. And there might even...
Okay.
Yeah, you could even potentially make a case that the government shouldn't do FDIC with banks in the first place because it isn't necessarily a role that the government should have. I mean, the banks ought to be responsible
Yeah.
for their clients and their money.
Right.
The bank bailouts are often ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I do see what you mean.
Yeah, here's an interesting idea. So, I mean, part of our problem with like the $35 trillion debt, it's a matter of, I think it's all like faith, and like money is very much psychological in the sense of like, it's the belief of we're exchanging these bonds internationally, and now it's a matter of like, oh, well, the government bond is the most trustworthy, and you get this mantra repeated all the time in your education. But then what happens, I think one of the bad things about the Biden administration was it embarrassed us globally, and then it started to like, showed that America, the emperor, had no clothes. So it's like, well, gee, maybe America really can't pay off this. So then you see these, China buying more gold. You see the BRICS countries starting to form together. Russia breaking off as well. So it's a bit of a tricky situation. And now I think the conversation with Bitcoin is, well, if we don't no longer believe in America and its dollar, can we get the world to believe in Bitcoin? And it'll be interesting to see if like Bitcoin enters the conversation in regards to trying to resolve this debt crisis. I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch, but what do you guys think about that idea?
Yeah, I mean, there is the potential that Bitcoin could go up so much. You never know. It could go up so much that they say, oh, we have enough to pay off the debt. And there we go. Now, who knows if we'll ever reach that point.
Yeah.
But gold was outlawed. So there's certainly the concern that if there's government intervention with Bitcoin,
Yeah.
couldn't they outlaw Bitcoin? I say it's too decentralized to do that, that
Yeah.
it would be too difficult and it's too ingrained in the financial system already. I'm excited that President Trump and his team support crypto, and that's a sharp change from the Biden administration, who basically sued every crypto under the sun because government doesn't like competition. So, Holden, I know you're a huge believer in Bitcoin, but why have you staked so much of your assets on it?
Well, of course, as I said before, it's just better money. So that's why, and I think cash balances will flow into it because it's better. So nextly is the idea that the government could just ban it, and it's not that simple because China, they tried to do this with the miners. The miners in China, it was something like 40% of the miners were in China back before they outlawed it, and then they outlaw it, and then the Bitcoin keeps running. The Bitcoin network just keeps running perfectly fine, and Bitcoin crashes when that happens, and it goes back up, and then more miners join the network, and it gets more powerful. I think in most Western countries, it's likely that it's not going to happen. Most of the central bankers are PhDs from universities that constantly teach that the government needs to be in control of the money, or else it's going to be a disaster.
Yes.
Even though it's just completely nonsensical and ridiculous, that's what they believe. And they believe that central banking is an important function of the state. And you see, it's like a boiling frog. Like if you put, that analogy, if you put a frog in water, but not boiling water, and you slowly turn up the temperature, and eventually the water's boiling. I think Bitcoin's a good example of this, in that cash balances will keep flowing into Bitcoin, and the government doesn't really see it as competition. And I think it's already too late. But before you know it, Bitcoin is a larger cash balance size than the United States dollar and every other currency. So at that point, it doesn't matter what Jerome Powell thinks. It doesn't matter what the ECB thinks. It doesn't matter what the Bank of Canada thinks, or the Bank of Japan thinks, or Xi Jinping thinks, or Vladimir Putin thinks. Bitcoin is the dominant cash balance of the world, and there's really nothing they could do about it. So that's how I see this playing out.
Yeah, and I think with new crypto policies, we could really see growth in the industry. For instance, the Biden administration tried very, very hard to stop the Grayscale Corporation from being able to list a Bitcoin ETF on the markets. It was only because they were overruled in a court ruling that was able to happen. So very fortunate for us, for the markets, for the country itself, that was able to go through. And now I think we're going to have an administration that will not be tackling Bitcoin and other cryptos at every corner. But there is the other issue, looking at, say, the altcoins and rug pulls. Do you think that, Coleman, say, people get too confused between Bitcoin and these micro cap coins that, like, people rug pull on you?
Yeah, and this is, I think one of the issues with this is, like, because it's still an emergent technology, and I think maybe in part because it competes with the government, like, it's not in the curriculum yet in universities. Like, I think maybe it, at the very least, should be in finance, but it's definitely, nowhere near the economic program. Like, we're learning about AI, and like machine learning now, which is, I guess, still emergent and more recent, but we haven't really, dipped into like understanding cryptocurrency yet at all in our curriculum, which I guess is interesting. So my point is like the general public really doesn't understand this technology all that well, and me myself, I'm still trying to understand it. So even if like my president, says, "Oh yeah, I just launched a meme coin," I'm like, I'm not engaging because I don't trust it, and because I know the formula. Like the crypto bros get in, they take advantage of a vulnerable influencer. This also happened to like that freaking Haley Welch girl, the Hawk Tuah girl. Yeah. So, and then what happened there? They launched a coin. People buy the coin in mass, basically. And I think what happens is the insiders sell the coin at its peak. They make a bunch, of money. And then the rest of the people who are still holding the coin witness a massive fall in the value of the coin. And then they're left,
holding the bag.
Yes, correct. And yeah, Sorry, could you repeat what exactly you're asking, Craig?
That do you think people are too easily confused between Bitcoin and the Haktua coin?
I think they are. Yes, because I am. so,
yeah.
so I think it would be useful if there's more educational resources on this matter, and like it would become more approachable for the general public to use. So.
Gotcha. And Holden, you're more of, say, a Bitcoin maximalist. Is that correct?
Yes.
So President Trump's coin, how do you feel about it? The tokenomics,
got
the
rug
fact that he launched it in the first place. Does it make sense for him to do? Well, how do
I
you
think it
feel?
hurts his reputation.
Yeah, I agree with the latter statement from Coleman. I also think that I mean it's very simple. Bitcoin is a commodity, and everything else is essentially an unregistered security in the crypto world. So Ethereum is an unregistered security, essentially. I mean, the SEC said it was a commodity, but it's not really. A commodity is something, it's an asset without an issuer. Bitcoin is an asset without an issuer. Everything else is controlled by a certain group. Nobody decides the protocol for gold or soybeans, but you could decide the protocol for virtually any of these other cryptocurrencies. So that's what makes Bitcoin unique, or one of the things that makes Bitcoin unique.
Okay.
Several things that makes Bitcoin unique. The protocol for Bitcoin is not determined by a specific group of people, really. It's determined by it's decentralized, and the nodes can vote on stuff, and the software keeps getting better, and it could still innovate, but at the same time, it stays decentralized. So essentially, whenever you buy any of these other tokens, and someone can call me closed-minded if you'd like to, I really don't care. You're buying. There's a very good chance you're buying a scam, just so you know. So like, if you want to speculate on it, that's great, but I'm not. And could there be another crypto in the future that makes sense? Totally could be. I haven't seen it. Virtually everything that I take a look at, with the exception of Tether, it doesn't make any sense to me, because you're buying something. And you could buy 1,000 different things where there's a board of directors and somebody can issue more of it. There's no shortage of that. If you want to, there's a lot of stuff you could buy. Bitcoin is unique in that regard, and I think that's the main distinction that you should look at. Am I buying a commodity or security? That's why I think it's I think I can ethically promote Bitcoin, because I'm not promoting a stock that I could issue to people if it goes up in price. Mm-hmm. I'm promoting something that nobody controls. So that's what I think makes Bitcoin special, or one of the things, and why it's ethical to do something like that.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And Coleman, I want to get you with the closing thought on this.
Closing thought. I think So I think in summary, what we're basically talking about today is the state of Bitcoin as it's sort of, there's talks going around like, oh, this is going to be the crypto presidency. And there's speculation as to what extent, say, like David Sachs is going to have like an influence as in this field. I don't know. We'll see. And just do your homework. I think the one funny thing I'll say, if you go on X and you see a profile picture with some sort of inanimate cartoon-looking character looking slightly right, and then it's like it's an anonymous name, it's telling you to buy the meme coin, don't buy the meme coin. So in that case,
This is a little common sense.
right?
Yeah. Always do your own research, and nothing on this show is financial advice. It is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Again, always do your own research for any financial instrument. That being said, thanks everyone so much for watching. We really appreciate it. We upload 3 times a week. If you'd like to reach out to us, feel free at youthbombs@alatrarepublicans.com. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks so much, everyone.